Hi, my name is Paige Edling, and I will be focusing on the foot and ankle complex, specifically the impairment of excessive foot pronation. I'll take you through a systematic assessment and then review my findings, and then also demonstrate a complete corrective exercise strategy. So excessive foot pronation is also sometimes called flat feet or fallen arches. It can result from altered joint alignment or just faulty movement patterns along the kinetic chain. So for my systematic assessment, I used 3 different assessments. First was the static posture assessment, then the overhead squat assessment, and then the gait observation. For the static posture assessment, I cued my client to stand with her feet about shoulder width apart, just looking forward. I observed her stance from the front and from the side and noticed the flattening of the medial longitudinal arch and a slightly internally rotated tibia. The second assessment was the overhead squat assessment. I showed my client how to perform this assessment with your feet about shoulder width apart and holding your arms above your head. I did observe that her feet flattened and externally rotated, which is a common indicator of overpronation. The gait observation also showed excessive calcaneal eversion. Based on these assessments, the overactive muscles are likely the lateral gastrocnemius, the peroneals, and the soleus, and the underactive muscles are the medial gastrocnemius, the anterior tibialis, and the posterior tibialis. Potential causes of the imbalances we are seeing in the feet and ankle are maybe improper footwear that lack support in the arch, and then also maybe from a sedentary lifestyle or from overuse of repetitive movements such as running. Also just weak intrinsic foot muscles could also cause these imbalances. So starting with our corrective exercise strategy, first is our inhibitory techniques. We are going to foam roll the overactive muscles, which again are the lateral gastrocnemius, the soleus, and the peroneals. We're really going to hone in on the peroneals and the gastrocnemius. We're really trying to deactivate these overactive muscles that are causing these imbalances before we move on to our lengthening techniques. Beginning with the self-myofascial rolling of the lateral gastrocnemius, I showed the client on how to cross her legs and roll on her calves. I told her to hold on the tender areas for 30 seconds at a time, and we just did this for a few minutes on both legs. Next was the rolling for the peroneals, in which we laid on our sides, holding ourselves up with our elbows, and rolled back and forth on the outside of our calves. I also instructed the client to hold on the tender areas for 30 seconds for this one too. Next, for our lengthening techniques, we use static stretching to elongate those same muscles, increasing the flexibility and the range of motion because tightness in these muscles is most likely what is limiting the dorsiflexion of the feet. Our first stretch was for the gastrocnemius. I instructed the client to hold onto the wall and kind of lean forward, feeling that in her gastrocnemius, and also holding for 30 seconds. Next was the static stretch for the soleus, which is just slightly different with our knees a little more bent, and we're also holding this stretch for 30 seconds and repeating for 2 sets. We also lengthened the biceps femoris muscle because this muscle is usually overactive. We also held this stretch for 30 seconds and repeated 2 times. Next, we used activation techniques to help re-educate and increase the activation of the underactive muscles, which again were the medial hamstrings and the anterior tibialis and the posterior tibialis. Our first isolated strengthening movement was for the posterior tibialis and the anterior tibialis. We started with the anterior by moving our feet just straight in front of us, and then we moved our foot slightly outward for the posterior tibialis. I instructed the client to complete 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps with a 2-second isometric hold at the top and a 4-second eccentric contraction. Staying on the same cable machine, we activated our medial hamstrings by just flexing our knee joint. We also completed 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps, holding a very slow eccentric contraction. The last phase of the corrective exercise strategy is the integration phase, in which we challenge the full kinetic chain and we retrain all of our muscles to work together in functionally progressive exercises. Starting with the single leg balance reach, I instructed my client to really focus on her posture and her balance, and also to keep her core engaged throughout the exercise. We completed 10 to 15 reps and made sure to keep our movements very slow and controlled. To progress this exercise in the future, we can reach further. Our next exercise was the step up to balance, in which we also performed 10 to 15 reps under control. To regress or progress this exercise in the future, we can just change the height of the step. To summarize, I assessed and I identified excessive foot pronation using the gait, squat, and the posture analysis. I also addressed the impairment with a complete corrective exercise strategy. First, we inhibited the peroneals and the calf muscle. Next, we lengthened all the tight muscles, then activated our weakened muscles, and integrated the movement using proper mechanics. This approach helps to realign the foot and reduce any stress on the whole kinetic chain, also enhancing overall performance and just making everyday activities a little easier for the client. Thank you for watching.